Mr. President, I rise today to speak on immigration reform. For nearly 20 years, we've been talking about the dreamer population. We've been talking about border security for just as long. It's time we did something, and there's a lot of desire among my colleagues to find a path forward to make a deal. But as I said at yesterday's Judiciary Committee hearing, to do that, we need to be realistic. To my Democratic friends, I say it's time to stop pushing for a clean Dream Act. As a matter of simple political reality, it's not going to happen. To my Republican friends, I say we're not going to get the sun, the moon, and the stars. We should push for the best deal we can get, but we shouldn't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So let's be realistic, and I say that to both sides, as one who's made a lot of deals in my time. Here's where I am on the issue. First, we need a deal that has broad support. I hope we can get that support from both sides. Certainly, with a Republican majority in Congress, any deal that moves forward must have broad Republican support and be supported by the President. Second, we should be wary of false deadlines. There's been a lot of discussion that we need to have a bill done by this date or that date, even though those dates have nothing to do with relevant program deadlines. We should not create a false cliff and then plunge over it in a rush to get something done right this second. A deal on DACA is a deal worth doing, and it's worth doing right. Moreover, a deal on DACA should not just be about DACA. Third, we need a deal that's going to help our economy. Our goal here should be to strengthen our country. We do that by supporting communities and families and by ensuring that law enforcement has the tools it needs to keep our country safe. But we also strengthen our country by helping businesses to thrive and to create good, high-paying jobs for our workers. Fourth, we need a legislative solution for DACA. We can't keep kicking the can down the road and relying on dubious legal authority to keep individuals in our country. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to others who are seeking to enter our country legally. Fifth, we need meaningful improvements to border security and interior enforcement, not a fig leaf, not window dressing, real reform. There's been a lot of talk about a wall. To those who are unwilling to entertain any deal that has wall funding, I say let's not let something that would amount to less than 0.1% of the federal budget scuttle a once-in-a-generation deal. Sixth, we need to close loopholes and reduce fraud and abuse. One area that's been particularly susceptible to these problems is the diversity visa lottery. I've long been skeptical of the program. In fact, I influenced or introduced legislation in 2011 to sunset the program unless changes were made to cut back on fraud and abuse. Another area that constitutes an enormous potential loophole is the ability of individuals to come to our country illegally, but then use family relationships to absolve themselves of the consequences of their illegal actions. I think it's a problem, Mr. President, to allow people who come into our country in open violation of our laws to turn around and avail themselves of our Constitution and laws to backdoor themselves into lawful status. We need a better system than that. Finally, I think high-skilled immigration needs to be part of the discussion. There's been a lot of talk recently about merit-based immigration. Well, high-skilled immigration is merit-based immigration. It's immigration targeted at the best, the brightest, and the most highly educated. Next week, I plan to reintroduce my Immigration Innovation Act, or I-2. This bipartisan legislation, newly updated for this Congress, will better align high-skilled visas with market demand so that employers are able to hire the talent they need. It will help end our stupid practice of educating people here in the United States and then sending them back home to compete against us. And it will stop some of the troubling abuses we've seen with the H-1B program. We should welcome the best and the brightest in the world, regardless of their country of origin. My I-Squared Act will help us do that. Mr. President, our immigration laws are a mess. They're a morass of conflicting and confusing obligations that reflect past Congress's pet projects and idiosyncrasies rather than any real overarching principle. I want a system that makes sense. I want a system that is merit-based. I want a system that doesn't penalize people who were brought to our country illegally through no fault of their own, but that also discourages future unlawful entries. Surely we can have a system that does both. Surely we can find a path forward that is fair and just to the dreamer population, but that reduces the incentive for future illegal immigration. Surely we can design a system focused around economic growth rather than arbitrary allocations of visa numbers. And surely we can create an immigration policy that focuses on what individuals will contribute to our country rather than where they came from or who they know. In short, Mr. President, as I said earlier, we should welcome the best and the brightest in the world, regardless of their country of origin. That should be our mantra as we move forward. With that, Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.